So I didn't exactly have the resources in front of me here to do this, but we'll give it a shot. This is the October meeting of the Bloomington Environmental Commission. And we'll start with we have a quorum confirmation, so we'll start with introductions. And found the page I was really looking for, that list of members. So we'll do it alphabetically again. Well, starting with myself, I'm Mike Litwin. I'm commission member and vice chair. Matt
Caldy, commissioner.
Meredith
Dickerson, commissioner.
Don
Eggert, commissioner.
Is Susanna here yet? Okay, we'll keep moving.
No.
Daniel, is he here?
No.
Okay. Dave
Parkhurst, commissioner.
Okay, we have a bare quorum. Next item of business is the approval of minutes. And we have at least 2 months worth of minutes to work on here, August and September. And Ben sent those to everybody recently. So I don't know, Ben, did you get any feedback on that? Ben?
He's muted.
Ben, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So yeah, I got one set of feedback from Dave, I think. I know it was just sent out like yesterday, I think. So I was still waiting for more people to comment on it. But I'll wait until maybe mid next week. And if I don't hear anything, then I'll make the changes that are necessary.
Okay, well, I will. I sent a few things too, but they were housekeeping type things, grammar and so on, not substantive.
Yeah, mine were just spelling.
Beg pardon?
Mine were just spelling.
Yeah, so
anything.
I don't think we would need to wait on a vote for it for those sort of things. And if there were substantive recommendations by the other people, they're too late. So can someone move to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve both sets.
Or a second?
Second.
Okay. Anybody who is not in favor of approving the minutes, say no. So minutes are approved. And we'll move on to public comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to make a comment?
No, but Andrew's with us now.
Okay. Let's see, I'll take a look at him. Okay. Andrew, we started the meeting. Can you hear me? Okay, we started the meeting just a couple of minutes ago, so it's all yours.
You need to unmute.
There we go. I was trying. It was telling me the host wasn't going to let me, but then it did. Sorry for being late. I had a phone call that ran over. I got off as soon as I could once I realized that we were running over. So now, if I'm not mistaken, we are on reports from commissions with Tree Commission up first.
Well, this is an odd month. Usually the Tree Commission meets on, well, always the Tree Commission meets on third Wednesdays and we meet on third Thursdays. So usually theirs is the day before ours, but this is a strange month because the 1st of October was a Thursday. So the third Wednesday comes 6 days after the third. Let me start that over. The third Wednesday comes 6 days after the third Thursday. So we meet next week and I don't have anything to report.
Unmute, Andrew.
Sorry about that. Getting used to Zoom again. The Monroe County Environmental Commission is up next. I have not heard anything from their chair recently. I'm going to actually look, because I'm going to admit I forgot to before the meeting, look for their minutes from their last meeting to tell you. I do know that there has been movement on the deforestation at the watershed at the peninsula on Lake Monroe that the county had to settle on. And I know they were involved in that lawsuit, but that's the only development I've heard in the commission recently. But I'll double check to see if there's anything that I missed. So next we have the Commission on Sustainability.
They didn't, as far as I know, they didn't meet this month. I looked on there was nothing listed on the city meetings for this month. I had no idea why. I looked over the meeting minutes from last month's meeting, and basically they just had a presentation on the sustainability proposal or and letter supporting the budget, I guess, to city council from last month. That's all I have. I have no idea why there was not a listing for them for this month. And I checked multiple times during the, since the beginning of the month to see when they were meeting. So I don't know if maybe somebody was out of town or something, or it just didn't get posted. So that's all I have on that.
Okay, that's perfect. So I assume everyone had a chance to look over the ERAC minutes that were sent. Is there anything anyone had to add to those minutes that we received earlier, or anything, questions anyone has about that?
Well, the thing I sent yesterday wasn't exactly minutes. It was just a small part of our meeting. So let me go through the agenda, which wasn't quite the same order that we did things there, but this was yesterday afternoon. First on the agenda is the Griffey Lake Loop Trail and the fishing pier that they're going to be building. There's progress on that. They're working on how to cross the dam safely. And the trail is apparently 90% complete. So that's coming along. Second on the agenda was Saturday weed wrangles for invasive plant removal. That's been canceled for the year. They're hoping in March to be able to do a weed wrangle and take out garlic mustard, but I didn't catch where that would be. At Miller Showers, Ecologic is burning down some turf. I think it might have been as much as an acre, meaning to get rid of what seems like a lawn, and they're going to plant natives there. And they're taking down some calorie pears as well, happily. So that was the old business. New business for education. Rebecca, who wasn't there, she was on vacation, but she's usually our leader there, is filming at Leonard Springs and Griffey. Most years, I forget whether it's the fourth graders from all the schools or the fifth graders, it's one or the other, I think, go to Leonard Springs and look at things like the stream quality. My wife and I several times have told them about the deciduous forest there. There are, I think, 8 different sites that they go to when they do those tours. Well, this year that's going to be done by a film that Rebecca is taking, and she'll send those to the schools. There are some outside activities that go with those films, but we weren't told what those were. Next on the agenda, actually, we did this first, was Leif Willie's presentation on aquatic vegetation management at Griffey. He's, I guess, the head of a firm that's actually doing the work there. And turns out that boat registration at the state is actually paying 80% of the cost of controlling the aquatic invasives. And so the city is getting $11,600 for doing that. And the main plant that they worked on this year was Eurasian water milfoil, and one other plant that I didn't catch. It competes with native plants for nutrients and light. It startled me to hear him say that it could grow 13.5 inches a day. It's not a food source for any animals that we would like to have, fish or anything else. Apparently there's a milfoil weevil that helps to control them, and they used those earlier, but this year they used a herbicide, which they only applied a total of 0.4 pounds of the active ingredient, and no Eurasian water milfoil was found after August 3rd. Next on the agenda is the CHAP program. That's an acronym for something, I've forgotten what it is, but it's a hunting program where somebody from the White Buffalo company that actually did the shooting several years ago, taking out deer at Griffey, somebody from there coordinates this CHAP program. For this year, they have over 50 hunters who are approved to go there. And the DNR says that this is a deer reduction zone. They'll be there the weekends of November 14th and 15th, 21st and 22nd, 28th and 29th, and the park will be closed down at that point. Let's see. Oh, next on the agenda is parks and trails are being produced on, or being dealt with a couple of apps that provide maps that people can look at the city's parks and trails. I didn't understand that too well, but I did send you a link that you can use to get to some of those. And next on the agenda was the integrated pest management plan that was updated this year. I read through it and didn't see any problems with it. It all sounded pretty good. Some people are suggesting revisions, and they're working on those now. And that's all for yesterday. Oh, MC Iris next year will be trying to take out winter creeper. That's the plant of the year for invasives that MC Iris wants to take out. QED.
I'll double back for a second to the Monroe County Environmental Commission. They are changing or attempting to change how many members they have. They're trying to narrow down to a lower number, as well as change the name of the commission officially. It's still technically the Environmental Quality and Sustainability Commission, or EQUAS, and they just want to change that to the Environmental Commission officially. They also are looking at developing internal guidelines of how to make sure new members are from around the county and not just centered in or immediately around Bloomington. And they are working on energy tracking for offices within the county, which they did when I was on the commission several years ago as well. And they're looking at ways to do social media outreach during the pandemic, since they can't hold any in-person events at this point in time. And then moving on to the next one, which is the Metropolitan Policy Organization. They have been working on the draft transportation plan for the 2045 transportation goals. Due to difficulties and how long it is and intense it is, they're extending how long their internal policy committee can make recommendations to that plan. They are not currently reaching public comment yet, but when they do, I'll make sure to let you know in as much advance as I can. And that's really about it. They discussed also possible topic suggestions for future agendas besides the transportation plan. But they haven't made any action on any of those items as of yet. I'm assuming that'll be at the next meeting. Do we have an update from Friends of Lake Monroe?
Yes. I think the steering committee, the 20 of us on that, there was a Zoom meeting with maybe just 4 people, and I don't remember much of anything being accomplished, but more important was the sampling blitz, which was actually written up in the Herald Times. Some of you may have read that. They meant to do this last spring, but that was shut down at the time because of the virus. But they held it this time by either having people, we work in teams of 2, and it was either like family teams, or if it was separate people from separate places, they were supposed to travel separately. And lots more CO2 going off into the air, I guess, but that's what happened. There were 70 volunteers, I think something like 150 small streams or bigger streams, but in the Lake Monroe watershed, which is about half in Brown County, only a small part of it is in Monroe County, maybe as much as 20%, but not more than that, I think. And so what we did was, my wife and I were one of the teams, and we went to, I guess we had 4 streams that were kind of hard to find. And we went to those. 3 of our 4 streams were dry, so we didn't have much sampling to do. The 4th one was a big stream under a bridge, and so we lowered a bucket into the stream to get the sample. And quite a few of the streams that people did that year, that time, were like that. They're going to be doing this again in the spring of next year now, to make up for the fact they couldn't do it this past spring. And they may want more volunteers then. If they do, I'll let you all know, and you might get involved. So it's just a matter of taking some samples, and then they send them off for E. coli, which in my view is something that gets sampled because it's easy for people to count the numbers on Petri plates, but it's not. I've got a book chapter that says E. coli are not very good at predicting the things that actually make people sick. They just indicate that there's fecal material of some sort around. And so it's, I think, sampled very often just because it's a simple thing to do. We also, the samples also went into sediments and nitrogen and probably phosphorus and some other things as well. So that's Friends of Lake Monroe.
Could I add something to that? I was also one of the volunteers, and like David and his wife, water at all 4 sites, but the flow at 2 of the sites was absolutely 0. The other one site did have flow, and that was Salt Creek itself. And the other one we sampled, there was no visible. There was water there, but no visible movement. So the drought conditions are really evident.
3 of ours were totally dry, but by spring there ought to be water in all of them. So we'll try to do a better job of finding them.
Thanks, Dave and Don. Moving on to working groups, starting with the ECPC and Plan Commission. Linda, do you have anything for us today?
Yes, a little bit. It won't take too long. The McDowell Business Center is back on the agenda for the Plan Commission in November. And they have changed their plan, their site plan to be 2 apartments and townhouses. So that's sort of a major change that I'll be talking to the ECPC about. The next one on the list is Bill Brown at Fullerton Pike. And what they are requesting is just a zoning change. Currently, it's a PUD, and they want to change it to mixed-use corridor. And they don't have a plan. There's no site plan because they don't have anything in mind for it yet. But part of the reason that they're doing this is because the city is looking into retiring some old PUDs. So there's very little difference between what was allowed and disallowed in the PUD and what will be allowed and disallowed in the MC district. So it's almost a housekeeping issue. And let's see. Oh, that's also the same. I'm skipping ahead of myself on my list. But another Bill Brown property is on the corner of 446 and East 3rd Street at Century Village. And that's a PUD. Most of it is built out, but not all of it. And it's another one that they're requesting just a change in zoning, sort of just to bring it up to date on what, on the new UDO and the new zoning districts. The last one on the list is Habitat for Humanity. We've talked about this one before. This is the large area off of South Rogers, and the address is actually on Guy Avenue. And it's between 7 and 8 acres that they want to build a development that they're calling Osage Neighborhood. And we'd heard about this before when they went through a rezone, but now they're bringing the site plan forward, and it really isn't any different than what we saw before. So again, I will be bringing this one to the ECPC just so they can see it. And it's time for us to weigh in on a little more now than we did when it was just a rezone. So that's all I have in that department.
I have a question for you, Linda. When you say the city's looking to retire some PUDs, do you have more information on what that means in the timelines? Because I worry about it becoming potentially like a use it or lose it scenario, where we see a sudden influx of rezoning requests within a set period of time. But I don't know how many PUDs fall under the retirement plan, so to speak.
Right. I cannot give you any real details because I don't know them. I just know we have a lot of not a lot. We have some PUDs that are very old. And because they were created a long time ago, they don't necessarily follow the plan that we may have for them now. So what we'd like to do is basically retire them. And then, that would mean that they'd have to be put into a current zoning district. But they are PUDs that nothing's happened on them in all these years. So why have them as a PUD anymore?
That's fair.
But I honestly don't know how many. I just told you all of the details I know.
Okay, that's fair. I was just wondering, and you probably don't know since you just told me you know all the details, but one other question I would have would be, do developers still have the opportunity now to still purchase the land and use it as a PUD, or is that already bygone?
I don't think it's bygone yet.
Okay, I was just curious for my own.
I think it's something that they're looking at down the road, you know, the retirement of some of these PUDs, but I don't think it's a done deal or anything yet. So.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Does anyone else have a question about the Plan Commission or the ECPC?
Yeah, mine comes from my sense of humor. She mentioned an Osage development, and I wonder if that's got Osage orange trees or what's otherwise known as hedge apple trees. And the reason I ask that is that there's a retirement village called Redbud Hills. My wife and I looked around their property once and they had absolutely zero redbuds. So why is it called Redbud Hills? Anyway.
Well, I assume that there are Osage oranges there, given the name, but I couldn't really vouch for that.
I see. Well, my backyard along the border has 5 Osage orange trees that a forestry guy once told me used to be part of a mile-long row of them. And they were planted as hedges because they're very thorny, which is why their fruits get called hedge apples too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an interesting tree. Wonderful firewood, except it's very hard and it just burns and burns and burns, but it also chews up chainsaw chains. So.
Well, I haven't been out there for a while, but now that they've submitted a site plan, I'll go out again, and the hedge apples ought to be on the ground right now. So I'll be able to tell you.
And I am familiar because I believe Osage is another Habitat for Humanity neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken. And the other Habitat for Humanity neighborhood, Trailview off the Beeline Trail, actually arranged with the community orchard here in Bloomington to get fruiting trees and hedges planted around their property for the residents to utilize themselves. So if they don't have any fruiting trees there, I'm sure that they can be easily convinced to do something similar. Whether or not that's something that we want to offer a friendly recommendation for, that's, you know, we all have to wait and see how they use the property to begin with. But excellent. Do we have any reports this evening from the other 2 working groups?
No reports, but I think we need to discuss at some point this working group format, because several of these groups don't have members and have not met in a long time. And do we really want to keep this format or revise it or reestablish committees, something?
That sounds like something to take up at our January planning meeting, maybe.
Agreed.
I agree as well. We've kind of, I know at least I have, and I've tried to convey it in my conversations with Linda that I have struggled with how to rearrange working groups or how to utilize them best, simply because, especially now, it's more difficult, I think, to work on a lot of things, because I always envisioned the working groups being a major part of our community ties. So like the water working group would perhaps work with Friends of Lake Monroe and other groups focused on the watershed, and then report back and maybe encourage the Environmental Commission to work with them on different volunteer days or on gathering information or that sort of thing. But that's more difficult nowadays than ever before. So I think in January, we will have to have an in-depth conversation about how best to utilize them, both during COVID and after, when it eventually ends and we can go back to meeting in person more frequently. Does anyone have anything to add to that conversation? I definitely agree we'll have to talk about it at our January meeting, because I think it requires almost an entire meeting dedicated to hashing out that format. And I encourage everyone to think about that as we lead up to January. so that we come in with ideas already prepared about how we could possibly move forward.
Two comments about water. One is that now that the Friends of Lake Monroe have this 2-year research program, that they're sort of doing a lot of the water work that we might be interested in. And we'll no doubt get reports of what they find in the end. The other thing is that in November, we're going to have a presentation from Andrea Webster from the Environmental Resilience Institute. And one of the things I've asked her to talk about is something she showed on a Zoom meeting that I sat in on. The state has a pretty neat system generating floodplain maps. And it would be good to see the floodplain map for Bloomington. So.
Any other comments on working groups or a specific working group or anything related to that topic? Seeing none, we'll move on to our old business. Item A is Mary Welt's water issues. I would appreciate from whoever takes head on this topic to provide a little background information, both for anyone watching who may be unaware and for myself, who has been absent on this issue. So who would like to go ahead?
I can start out on it. Mary came to our last meeting as public comment. She lives in the Broadview neighborhood. And she previously had a water feature in her yard, I believe a spring that started on her neighbor's property. Somebody correct me if I'm missing the details here, and created a small waterway that crossed her property, and she said there was a wetland along it. A while back, the CBU did a sewer installation there, and they did a lot of digging to install a sewer line, low point in the ground in the landscape. That's where they like to put sewer lines. But after they finished, the water feature no longer existed. She said there was some sort of a karst connection to it, I believe. So she's complained and talked to the city about it. And I think she came to us when she wasn't getting any resolution elsewhere, but I have no details on that part of it. So we said maybe we should discuss that at a future meeting and decide if we wanted to take some sort of action on it. And what would be needed to do that is we're going to have to do some research and find out some more information about it.
Well, in the meantime, I've gotten a little more information. There, in that area, there were some failing septic systems. So utilities got a grant to put in sanitary sewer lines. And so they bought the easement from Mary and her husband. They purchased an easement along the back of their property, and it was in fact a low spot, and it was between the two properties, and it had been damp back there, and so Mary had purchased and planted some plants, some native plants back there. Anyway, when they came through, that is when a spring was discovered on the neighbor's property. At least that's when it was discovered by utilities. Mary maybe knew about the spring previously, but I'm not sure about that. But utilities didn't know about it until they got there. So they put in their sanitary sewer line, and when they did that, as you can imagine, they put gravel down, and then they put the pipe down, and then they put more gravel down. So the gravel can act as kind of a faster waterway. So evidently, and they when they encountered the spring, they contoured it down to the intermittent creek that went through there. And I guess the gravel around the pipe, made sort of a conduit for the water to move faster. And so it doesn't stay as wet as it used to. And so she feels, as Mike said, that something was done wrong. But according to utilities, that's who I talked to, everything was done exactly right. They even compensated her to buy new plants for the area. And Mary said that she didn't think they were following Monroe County karst regulations, but they're not in Monroe County, it's Bloomington karst regulations. And they didn't do anything wrong in that regard. So I'm not sure what we can do about her situation. But that's just a few more details I wanted to throw in there after talking to the utilities department.
More than we did know. I hate to ask this, but is there by any chance was any of the standing water there a result of the failed septic systems?
Well, actually, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that because Mary and her husband had just installed a new septic system, but the whole purpose for the sanitary sewer was because there were other people along there that couldn't do that, and so they were providing city sanitation there. So I don't know the answer to that, Mike.
Okay.
That's a good question though.
I had the same thought when I was younger. My brother excitedly told me after a day of making mud pies outside that he had discovered a new creek behind our grandma and grandpa's house. And that's how we discovered my grandma and grandpa's septic system had ruptured. So I had a very similar thought come to my mind. But I don't see any real way forward if the easement was purchased properly and it followed Bloomington karst guidelines. I think if the homeowner feels that we need to advocate for stricter karst guidelines within Bloomington, that's a fair argument. That is something we could definitely take a look at, but that's about as far as I think we could go in rectifying this issue in the future, since what's done is done, I'm afraid to say. So,
Question I have is there a chance that the over time, the effect of the gravel will diminish?
I couldn't answer that.
Gravel does fill up if there's soil filtering through it, it will fill up.
So to understand, they installed gravel, which made the stream basically wick away further towards the intermittent creek that was on the property.
No, say it again.
They installed gravel for the sewer line that they were installing, correct?
Yes, around the pipe, standard procedure.
Did that, if I understood, I probably misheard you. It sounded like you said that caused that spring that she was talking about to move faster towards the intermittent creek so that the spring wasn't staying as full and thus was drier.
No, I don't think that's exactly the case. I think that basically the water that went through the creek and because it was a low spot, it kind of, slowed down a lot there. And it was, I think it moved faster away because of that gravel.
Gotcha.
So think of it as a drainage pipe almost next to the intermittent creek.
Did Mrs. Welts have before and after pictures by chance? Do we know?
She probably does, but I have not seen them.
Okay. I was just curious if we had seen those. Like I said before, I'm still convinced that beyond research into possibly strengthening karst regulations within Bloomington, if everything was followed by the letter of the law, I don't see much we could advocate for, much less change.
Well, as far as I know, let me add that disclaimer. I think that it was, and the spring wasn't identified beforehand. It wasn't on our GIS, so utilities wouldn't have known it was there until they came upon it.
I also think they said, or Mary said in the last time we met that she did have pictures, but she said they weren't great. So I don't know if that's helpful at all.
A question I have, Linda, and you may not like this question because it may cause more work if the answer is yes. I'm not quite sure 100% what the legal relationship between CBU and the city of Bloomington is in regards to city influence on policymaking or decision making. But would it be possible for either our commission or the Commission on Sustainability to work with the city of Bloomington Utilities when there is a plan that would exist, that would impact existing waterways or something similar for when they're making installations of that nature, the same way that we're asked when planning proposals come forward that impact the environment, obviously?
Well, as probably always, communication could always be better. But I do have to say that I know that from my position, I work pretty close with the stormwater group in utilities. Not that I know every case that they're working on, and they don't know every case I'm working on, but it certainly isn't true that we have no communication.
Okay.
We do work together.
Okay, I was just wondering if we hadn't heard about this, if it even went through the stormwater group, and if it didn't, is that because there's a regulation out there regarding what does and does not go before that body, and why would this not qualify?
Well, the stormwater group is in utilities.
Correct, and my question has morphed into, you said you don't know, so my question would be if we could possibly find out whether or not stormwater reviewed the plan for the sewer installation because it impacted an existing waterway, or if it didn't go before that stormwater group. And if it didn't, is that because they have a set regulation on how big a waterway must be or something similar before they get involved?
I'm happy to ask the question.
Okay, I think that's just something that would be important to know, even if we're just responding to the homeowner, because we could say, well, the spring has to be a certain size or has to have certain connectivity elements before it goes before a review body like that. I just think that might be something worthwhile to be able to pass on to the homeowner, as well as know for our own information what the exact regulations are. Because if every stream under a certain size or something similar criteria is excluded from a review process, that's just, I think, important to know for future reference.
Okay.
Are there any other questions regarding the water issue at the Welts property?
Not a question per se, but just a comment. I'm not sure what happened right or wrong procedurally, but I think the main thing was she was just really just mourning the loss of a wetland area that she cultivated and fears the water element will never return to. And even with the compensation, she says the compaction from the work and the gravel and things make the area, she said unplantable, but I'm just assuming that makes it a huge pain. And so I think she's trying to find a way, I don't know, if there's a way we can make this not happen to other people by surprise, that would be somewhat of a win, even if what's done is done on her property. So.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree that it would be nice to know whether or not there's even a process for water features of this size, and if there isn't, if it's possible to advocate for one in the future, even if it's just a simple notification process to the homeowner or to the stormwater group to make sure there's just that link there for all possible scenarios, or as many that are as reasonably possibly to be expected. Is there anything else on this agenda item before we move on? All right, next is the environmental justice statement and letter.
Ben, do you want to address this?
Sure. So I sent this out, I think, the middle of this week. So I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance at looking at it. But the previous two fellows crafted this letter, and I kind of just morphed them together to make it flow better and to take some points that maybe one fellow didn't really do so well and another one did, and kind of combine them. There's a summary and like a statement, and I think the goal is to put one of them at least in the paper, if I'm correct. And I know this has been a long time coming because I think they started writing this over the summer, if I'm not mistaken. And so if you guys have taken a look, what do you guys think? And hopefully we can get this in the paper next month or in November, or even earlier. I don't know when the papers come out exactly in Bloomington, but yeah.
So I'm confused about a reference to a letter. What I printed out was 4 separate paragraphs. Is that whole thing not the statement, or is part of that a letter and part of that is the statement? And what's up?
There's sorry, I keep saying letter. I meant to say summary. There's a summary and then there's a statement. The statement's just 1 paragraph, and then the summary is more, I think 3 or 4 paragraphs.
But is the statement one of those paragraphs, or is it something separate that I haven't seen yet?
No, I think you should have seen. I've labeled it, so it should have the summary first, and then I think below is the statement.
I think, Dave, the summary, we talked about putting a letter in the HT in the guest column. And I think that the first 3 paragraphs, I think the whole thing is the letter, but included in that letter is our statement that will probably go other places.
I did not receive that until I saw Linda's edits on it. So I had not seen, if it was sent out to everybody, I missed it somehow.
And I haven't seen it
as well.
I don't know that it was sent out to everybody because Ben was waiting for me to edit it. And after Dave's comments today, I went ahead and edited it to everybody. So he did not have the opportunity to send it out previous to what I sent out today.
So just to add to everybody's confusion, Jesus and I worked on, in August, a 4-paragraph version of the environmental justice statement that I sent in reply to Suzanne asking for it a couple of days ago. I don't know if we just got our wires crossed and we were both working on the same thing at different times, but I sent that out, looks like on the 13th.
Yes.
So I don't know. I just wanted to say I thought this was something I was also assigned to do with Jesus.
Oh, okay. I have no idea. I didn't see what you wrote or what you did. So, but I know I took something that Jesus wrote, right, Linda?
I think so. I'm very confused about it too, because Kate was working on it and Jesus was working on it, and evidently they came up with 2 different things at 2 different times. I think Meredith was working more with Jesus. I was working more with Kate. I think the whole thing is in a state of confusion right now.
I looked back at Jesus's July 30th, I believe it was, version that he sent out, and it looked very similar to the one that Meredith sent a couple of days ago. So I just assumed that was coming from his.
Well, they should all be pretty similar.
Is the draft we received from Ben significantly different from the draft we would have received from Meredith or Jesus?
It's shorter, but not different. I think I'm hesitating, like just sharing screens right now because I have like a million things pulled up.
So I just plugged the, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
you're fine. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say so the HT has a guest column limit of 600 words. But it's important to note, in my experience with publishing guest columns and letters to the editor and the HT, that for some reason their software that does word count counts some words that I would say are one word as two words. So I plugged in the letter draft that we got from Ben into the guest column submission section on the HT, and we only have about 30 words left in our bank to use. So I'm just saying that because when you said it was shorter, I was just saying that so you know, that's about as long as we could get it without maybe adding one or two more sentences. But
We would still have to put the disclaimer at the end too.
the disclaimer I included the disclaimer when I plugged it into the system.
My understanding is that the disclaimer is not counted in our word count.
Okay.
Oh, okay. If that's what the HT has told you, then that's
Right, but the first one of the earlier drafts was still too long. So I know in my edits, I took one of the paragraphs out that I didn't think was relevant to the letter. And so last I heard, it was just a little bit under the 600 word limit.
okay. If the disclaimer doesn't count towards the word limit, we have 81 words left.
Not to slow things down, but it seems to me we have enough confusion here that we ought not to be making a decision tonight.
I would agree. I would say that perhaps Ben and Meredith should work together to identify any differences in the drafts that do exist, and to decide how to incorporate anything that's missing from I would say perhaps Ben's draft, or just work out, finalizing them and instead of two separate drafts into one draft to propose at the next meeting for approval.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Has everyone read Ben's statement that Linda sent out in a Word document with her edits on?
I have.
I've only seen Linda's edited part, and that was a little hard to read. So
I don't know that I saw something that had Linda's edits in it. I just have 4 paragraphs that don't show anything being edited or anything. So I don't know what we're referring to here. Part of my confusion.
I sent out a track changes
7 hours.
version shortly after you sent yours, Dave.
After I suggested one word change, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. I missed that somehow.
Okay, so then we do need to resend it. I was going to say if everyone had read it, we should vote on it now because I did read both and they're not very different. But since we should just send out one more email with one document clearly labeled, sounds like.
I agree.
me too.
All right.
Okay.
Do we want that email to come from Ben then, or from Linda?
So what was the question?
Who wants to send the draft out to everybody to review? Would that be Linda's with her edits, or should we send Ben's original?
I can make the edits that Linda has put on, and then I can send it out to everyone, if that works.
I would agree to that. Because I reviewed Linda's edits and they mostly seem just some minor word changes and some lengthening and shortening. Nothing substantial, no substantial changes to the ideas or spirit of the letter. So I think that would be fine.
And Meredith, we can coordinate if you want to add like stuff as well.
Okay, I'll email you.
Perfect. Glad that we could hash that out. If there's no other comments or statements on that, we'll discuss that at our next meeting for approval of the finalized letter. Before then, I would say give people at least a few days to a week to make any proposed edits that they may have to the final draft. And then that'll give you enough time to incorporate some of the more minor changes, as well as for all the members to review any major changes that may be proposed prior to the meeting next month. Moving on to Monroe County and City of Bloomington Environmental Commission survey discussion. Linda, do you want to?
Sure, I can. I exchanged emails with the chair of the MoCo EC this morning, and they have not actually moved forward with it. They're still talking about it. It's still on their radar, but nothing right now has moved forward.
Could you just briefly describe to me the purpose of the survey? Is it like a survey of membership to determine?
No, they talked about sending a survey out to residents.
Okay.
To see what was the highest priorities of the residents. Isn't that right, Don? Don?
Which I'm not
Monroe
following.
County EC and their survey.
The Monroe County EC.
Yeah, I thought you had gone to those meetings. Never mind. Clearly it wasn't you. I think it was Daniel now that I think about it. Sorry.
Okay.
Anyway, the Monroe County EC discussed sending a survey out to county residents to see what the environmental priorities of the residents are. And we talked with them about joining in with them and are helping them or partnering or just whatever capacity they might want us to work with them in. And basically, it sounds like it's on hold.
Last email from Daniel said the same thing.
Okay.
Would residents of Bloomington be considered residents of the county, or are they just going to be? Would they be just addressing to the county residents?
Well, that hasn't been determined.
Huh.
I would say logically it would make sense for them to do a broad scale county-wide, including Bloomington survey, and then provide our commission with the results within Bloomington city limits, because the county does evaluate the concern. Like, you know, Bloomington's in Monroe County, but Monroe County is not just Bloomington, so it would make sense for them to collect data wide and then share it with us. But that could be up to discuss. Do we have someone currently in conversation with the Monroe County EC or the county regarding that?
I think Daniel had been. He's not here tonight, but he had been. And so I reached out to the chair, and then he got back with me this morning and said that they really hadn't done anything more. And to answer your question, Don, I don't know what the initial discussions in their commission involved. So I don't know the answer, whether it'd be all of Monroe County or Monroe County excluding Bloomington.
Well, thinking back to the seemingly the negative response to the mayor's suggested tax, I mean, we really are all in. The county and city really should be considered one entity. And as far as the environment in general, not just climate change,
I think that's why we asked the question about could we be involved also, and if we could if the city EC and the county EC could partner on asking everybody in the county it seems like that would be the best route to go.
Mhm.
So just to clarify, is the survey being done by the Monroe County EC of their own volition and, work, or is it being done by the county and they're providing the information to the Monroe County Environmental Commission?
I am not positive.
Okay.
I was not involved in the initial discussions of it, so I don't really know.
Okay, because I was curious because I was wanting to know if we wanted to talk with them about collecting data within Bloomington, whether or not they're going to, what the plan is, whether or not we would email the chair of the EC or someone within the county government themselves. I
have not had that a conversation that goes into depth that much, so I don't know the answer to your question.
No, that's fine. What I'll do is I'm going to go back and watch the last couple Monroe County Environmental Commission meetings as well as ours, just to catch me up to speed on everything that I have missed. And I will hopefully find an answer within that. And if I don't, we can proceed from there.
Mhm.
Well, it seems like we should contact Daniel too, didn't you say, Linda, that he'd had something to do with this in the past?
Yes, he went to a couple of the MoCo EC meetings, which is how he found out about it in the first place. So yeah, he should definitely be in on these conversations. He's just isn't here tonight. And as I said, I only had this email exchange this morning.
I'll email Daniel and ask. Down the notes for me. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the survey? Okay, so I'll reach out to Daniel, and if he doesn't know, I'll check back the last few meetings on CATS just to see if the answer is out there, and if it's not, then I'll reach out to the Environmental Commission chair and ask him. I'm just not too eager to ask if it's been discussed multiple times in their meetings or something similar, but we'll find the answer prior to our next meeting, and then hopefully we'll be able to get some input on that or more information as to whether or not we'll have access to that data. Moving on to new business, we have Bachelor Forest letter to the Herald Times and the Library Board of Trustees. I know there's been a lot of movement on this. Who would like to take charge of this agenda item?
Well, I will. I sent you those letters and I moved that we send them.
Do we have a second?
A second.
All right. Are there any questions or conversation or discussion prior to the vote? Anyone have any final last minute edits they want to propose or anything similar? All right. All in favor of submitting that letter to the Herald Times and sending it also to the Library Board of Trustees, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Excellent.
Okay, wait, hang on here. Ben, can you see everybody's name along with their picture on your screen?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back on Facebook and just look again so I can record who said what.
Okay, because Ben doesn't know everybody yet.
Oh.
And which face goes with which name. And he needs to know that as far as the vote roll call goes.
Would you like me to call a roll and just go down the vote?
I think it's okay because I see all your names here, so I don't think it's an issue. And I'll go back on Facebook and I'll just make sure that I'm just counting how many people said aye. So, but I'll go back and get everyone's name on it.
Didn't seem like anybody objected. I do have a comment. I'd like for this letter to go to the library on city
Letterhead.
And so Linda, can you take care of sending it to them? I'd send it to Mary, what's her last name? Woods, Mary Woods, Marilyn Woods it is, who's head of the library. I would send it to her and she can distribute it to the rest of the members of the board, I would say. And then I'll take care of sending the one to the newspaper.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this letter? Perfect. Moving on to our next discussion and agenda item, which is moving forward in a COVID-19 world. As I emailed you in my email a couple days ago, we wanted to have a conversation about how to best move forward. I'm sure I'm not the only one who hoped, perhaps naively, that this pandemic would have been over by now, or at least back to the point where we could meet in meetings in person with masks or something similar. We are clearly not at that point, and according to the trending infection rates in Indiana as a whole, we are not anywhere close to that. So we need to quickly and adeptly adapt new strategies for advocacy, for planning review, for our involvement with other bodies, so that we can best utilize your time as well as the resources of the city to advocate for the environmental climate in Bloomington. Now, there are, of course, endless ways to do that. So we need to have a brainstorming session now with any ideas that any of you may have come up with since then about potential avenues to go forward. In my letter, in my email, I outlined, Linda and I had talked about possibly re-reviewing the UDO and seeing if there's any additional changes that we might want to advocate for to the Plan Commission or City Council. That's just one potential avenue of ways to use our time and energy, and I am more than happy to hear any others that many of you may have come up with.
Well, this is a little bit of an aside, but I would like to put Ben on the spot and have him tell you just really briefly what he's working on right now, just so you know at least what he's doing.
Okay, so that's my cue. So what I've been working on is in the sustainable action plan and also the environmental action plan, it talks about a connectivity plan a little bit. And actually objective 8, promoting biodiversity by protecting and enhancing and expanding native wildlife habitat. And the second goal, creating pocket parks in Bloomington to promote wildlife. And in the sustainable action plan, 7.1D also talks about the connectivity plan. So what I've been going over with Linda is trying to find an area to basically create corridors, small corridors in private ownership areas where there might be forests or backyards of where people might be able to plant different trees or flowers or different ways for like pollinators and birds. And we're trying to basically create, we're not going to create like a stewardship, but we're going to create volunteers who basically say, we're going to pledge our land for this project and we won't develop anything on it. And we're going to try to plant more species on it and protect it so that it's going to be a wildlife corridor or a wildlife connective environment. So what we've been brainstorming is that I've been working on making a brochure that will hopefully send to all of the different families or different houses that we identify to be along the corridor that we'll be making, or where we think the connectivity plan would work best. So we'll send that to them. And if they hope to do this, or if they want to be part of the program, I'm going to make a link where they can basically make a pin on like Google Earth or a similar app like it, and they'll write a note saying we pledge this amount of land. This is what we're going to do on it. This is how we're going to protect it. And And then also we're gonna have them sign basically a petition. And since we're not meeting in person, we discussed doing a Google Doc. So I'll also have the link on the brochure where they can go to this Google Doc, and it will have basically a couple pages saying exactly what they're pledging to do. And we haven't really worked out the final kinks of it yet, but we're working on it. And by the next meeting, you'll definitely have exactly what the parameters are for signing this pledge. And then hopefully we'll have like a big list of people that sign. And we've decided that we're hoping to do it with just the people that we identify in the connectivity plan. So Linda mentioned that a map that kind of shows a donut where in Bloomington we want to have that area conserved for different private homes or different private land ownerships. And once we have that, we can send out everything. And this is just hopefully the beginning, and hopefully we'll do all Bloomington eventually, having people sign saying like, we're going to plant this, or we're going to conserve this area. So hopefully it could be, hopefully it could be a pretty big project in the end, but this is just kind of getting off, starting off. So yeah, that's what
Thanks, Ben.
I've been up to.
Sorry, Andrew, I wanted to just throw that in as an aside, so you'd know about that before we moved on with additional projects.
No, that's completely fair. Thank you for doing that. I was unaware. My question for Ben would be, how much time commitment do you think you would need from the members of the commission on that project, if any, just so that we have a general idea of how large of a commitment it may be on the commission's time versus what we could be using for another project, just so we don't take on too much at once, I would say.
So I think what I'm thinking is that you're really only going to have to review what I write and what they'd have to say, oh, okay. Like we'll hopefully make like parameters to what the private owners will say yes to, what they'll want to do. And hopefully you can review that and say, oh no, they should be stricter. We should encourage them to do more, not just that. If they sign this, that's really not encouraging them to do anything. So I would like you guys to hopefully review that when I write it. Also to look at the map of the connectivity plan of where we want to send this brochure to and have the people sign off in what areas of Bloomington that they are living. So we haven't really narrowed that down yet, where we want to send the brochure to or who we want to send the brochure to. So hopefully I could get a little help with that, but I'll obviously again write that first or figure out where that is first and see what you guys think. So kind of just reviewing what I'm doing would be the necessary work that I think you all would need to do.
And it would be helpful if everyone read the connectivity plan, because the EC finished that before many of you were on the EC. And so you probably don't know exactly what it says. But when you do read it, what Ben is doing is basically the continuation of kind of a phase 2 to implement what the plan said.
This is an extra thought for that. A lot of times priority for habitat corridors is along streams. And if there was private property interested in doing such a habitat corridor, there is federal cost share money available for that. So that might be something you'd want to include in the brochure.
Excellent.
That's really good information. I'll look into that.
Okay, yeah, the connectivity plan's located, I think it's linked on the EC webpage on the city website, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you can find it there. It's only 19 pages, light reading for anyone who's used to reading anyone who is here for the UDO. It's very light reading in comparison. So I would encourage everyone to give that a look as we move forward with that. But it sounds like from what Ben's saying, our role would be largely review and approve in various steps along the way. So I do think we still could take on safely another project or two, granting that they're not, extremely major overhauls of time. But I would say that we would be safe to move forward with brainstorming what else the commission could do in addition to Ben's connectivity project moving forward. Does anyone have any proposals or thoughts or ideas or comments or questions regarding potential avenues forward? Don't be shy.
Again, it seems like this is usually something we do in January of each year, of deciding where we're going and how we want to change, and maybe we ought to wait till January. I'm not sure.
Question is, in January, how will we be doing this again on Zoom? Probably. It looks like.
I would say yes. Obviously, it doesn't represent the city of Bloomington or Indiana, but I know that all the large tests that college students take, for example, the LSAT, the GRE, the GMAT, the MCAT, are continuing to suspend in-person exams until April, or through April. So at this point, I think a lot of organizations and businesses and educational facilities and institutions are preparing to endure this through the rest of the spring into 2021. So it would not surprise me at all to continue meeting through Zoom well into 2021, unfortunately.
Maybe a little bit harder. Exactly.
And I agree, Dave. This is an ideal January bucket list meeting discussion topic. I wanted to bring it up now partially because I want to start getting people brainstorming ideas. Since in the past it could be the sky was the limit at the January meeting regarding whether we could do more field work or do more advocacy at public meetings or something similar. Some of those options are now no longer on the table. So people may need to think a little longer and harder about what we could do with the new normal that we have to face. I also wanted to bring it up now because we still have 2 more months in which to continue the work of the commission before we start making the large changes that we normally change in January. My cat's saying hello. So I would, even if we just decide to continue submitting the letters to the editor and the HT, as well as maybe start, like Linda and I said, have people on their own time at just whenever they have some free time and want to do some heavy reading, re-review some aspects of the UDO that we may not have gotten the changes we want to get changed back in when we did the process earlier on. But again, that's just one possibility. But I think we do need to find something to do in addition to what we're currently doing for the next couple of months until we can have the big meeting in January where we hash all this out for the rest of 2021.
Andrew, one thing I reminded the commissioners of last month, and I intend to bring this up often, is that next year in August will be the EC's 50th anniversary.
That's correct. 1971. I just was reading that earlier today.
Yeah, And I'd really like to see the EC do a great big thing for it that we should be starting to plan for now, or, sometime soon. I just wanted to put it on everybody's radar. So you weren't with us last meeting, so I was just mentioning it.
One thing that could be cool would be to do it's not cool. One thing I think that could be beneficial would be to do like a 50-year report, just detailing whatever records we do have of large projects or accomplishments that the EC has done since starting. Like in the last few years, we've done the UDO. That was a major accomplishment. I'm wondering if something like that's been done before, and it would just be cool just to have a report saying, this is what's changed in the EC over the last 50 years. This is what we've accomplished. And then also as part of that, outlines maybe some goals we want to do over the next 50 years, what we want to see have accomplished by the EC by 2071. It would be cool, I think, for our commission to establish some long-term either goals or quantifiable measures of achievement that we'd like to see reached over the next several years. But that's just an idea that I have. I think there's several things we could do, especially if we're able to meet in person by next August, that we could consider.
I was first appointed in 1974, and I was on it for 14 years back then. And much of our work back then was trying to clean up Westinghouse's PCBs. I probably have some records about that.
Maybe you could send this request out by email too, to sort of keep it on our radar. Another item that we might consider is that at the August meeting, Christy Lindberg came in as a member of the public and requested that we consider, this is in the August minutes, partnering with CBU to make a video about, for homeowners, about stormwater.
Okay.
Hasn't been anything more on it since then, but.
Yeah, and one of the things that I don't know whether Vic Kelson's gone further with his idea of adopt a stormwater sewer in your neighborhood, sort of akin to the adopt a street. But I think when looking at city budgets, et cetera, any type of volunteer activity, myself and several of my neighbors now are being more conscientious of looking at cleaning out our own storm sewers, so the city doesn't have to send a crew out there to do it. There's a lot of things, and the volunteering in the park, doing that as well. There's a lot of things that getting more citizen participation, and volunteer. So many people rail about taxes, but if we can somehow increase the volunteer effort on by our citizenry, get them involved, certainly would help in the stress that COVID's put on the city budget.
That's an interesting idea. I noticed when I was walking, or when I walk everywhere. So when I just walk around town, especially after it rains, there's tons of sewer drains and that are just, and culverts that are just completely clogged. And I posted a picture of one on Facebook when I was walking around and just pointed it out, and people said, it'd be a lot nicer if every homeowner could go out in front of their house and just clear their own storm drain, and then you wouldn't have to worry about your street flooding. But I think creating a program where people who are already conscientious about that type of thing can volunteer to do it for a section of street would be beneficial, especially if we could identify areas in town that flood repeatedly, and reach out to homeowners and property owners there. Because I think if you reached out to a homeowner whose yard floods a few times a year because all the storm drains are clogged, that homeowner may be more willing to get a friend or two of theirs together and just go out after it rains and clear the storm drains so that it can cut their yard flooding and save them some trouble and money. I think that could be something that we could look into, and I think that could have the potential to at least help some of the areas in town that I've lived in that flood over and over and over again each summer and spring. So I like that idea personally. I think that's an interesting idea to help the city and homeowners alike.
Growing up in Chicago, Richard I Daley had a cleanup week that coincided with the public schools spring break every year. If you saw the litter in the city of Chicago today, you'd kind of wonder about maybe a blast from the past would help. But there's a lot of things that I think that this gets into the outreach aspect again of not just us, but all the other different commissions that we all have. So many of our commissions have overlapping interests. Again, just sort of trying to get out of the opposite of never volunteer. It's a good reason for people to volunteer.
And one of the aspects I like about it is that it is something that can be done, arranged remotely and done with social distancing in place. We don't have to go out there and wrangle together a group of 25 people to go clean up a creek bed somewhere and risk people being too close together and handling the same objects. But you can reach out to a homeowner or two and they can walk opposite sides of the street and just clear the storm drains on their street, and it's done. And you don't have to arrange a big volunteer day where people are working together. Just have people adopt what's close to them and have them work on their own or with their family members to do it.
I'm pretty sure utilities already has this in place, this program, Adopt a Drain.
I haven't heard of it. If they do,
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and with Southeast Park, two of my neighbors, a husband and wife neighbors, are both active in MC Iris, and the three of us have been working in the Southeast Park now since spring, and I think that we've put a fair number of hours in, and hopefully will make things a little easier for the parks people to meet their objectives.
So I just pulled up the Cbu Adopt a Drain map. They have a map online where you can see where drains have already been adopted, and they're marked in red. There are about 8 dots of red on the map. So it does not seem to be a very well known or publicized program. And I'm wondering whether or not they could use assistance in advocating for that program if they don't have the staff or manpower available to do that. I doubt that they have a full-time position dedicated to that. I doubt that they have, much money allocated towards advocating it. So I wonder if maybe reaching out to Cbu and seeing if there could be a partnership opportunity to try and get that more well known. Because we could also assist in looking at if there's any records that pertain to flooding within the city of Bloomington, maybe identifying areas that are more prone to flooding, like I said, and then reach out to homeowners there. That might be a way that we could advocate with Cbu on the existing program. That way CBU doesn't have to, they don't have to create anything new. We would just work to get them new people signed up as a possibility.
Well, also one of the things that the utilities and the increased amount of runoff, if the Purdue modeling, climate modeling, having a significant increase in annual precipitation and extreme weather events, it's, again, people don't like to pay taxes, but if they can, people can roll up their sleeves to make things a lot simpler for the city.
And I can tell you, if I owned a house and my yard kept flooding because our storm drains were getting clogged, I would be more than willing to cajole my neighbors into joining me once every week or two to clear them out. I know how expensive a flooded yard can be. So if we can help people avoid that, I think that's a good angle for us to go about. I'll try and find out. Linda, would you know off the top of your head who's a good person to reach out to at CBU to ask about maybe forming a partnership for this type of thing?
Yes, Christy Lindberg's in charge of it at CBU.
Christy Lindberg?
Yes.
CBU. I think that's something that if I don't want to assume that this is something that the commission wants to undertake, but is there any objection people have to perhaps the commission working with CBU if they're interested on identifying areas that we could target specifically to try and get people at least to know about this type of program and hopefully get them interested enough to actually participate in it? Is there anyone who has any problems with that idea, at least reaching out and seeing if they're interested? All right, seeing none, I'll reach out to her and just bring up the possibility, explain that we were brainstorming and we were talking about the program and thought maybe a partnership could be mutually beneficial. And if they're interested, I'll report back at the next meeting and we can work on figuring out details about how we want to move forward, if that's okay with everybody.
How about a letter to the HT telling about this program?
Again, joint letter from both, or also along with Tucson and sustainability commissioners too. But it's
Talk to Christy because I know that she does quite a bit of advertising on it already, and see what she has to say about when the last time she sent something to the HT about it was.
I'll get that information and then I'll report back to you hopefully before our next meeting, and then we can start brainstorming if necessary ways to move forward with that type of thing. But I do like that idea because, like I said, I do think it's something that's perfectly doable in a COVID-19 world. And I would like to encourage everyone to think of more ideas like that that we're able to do remotely and not have to worry about social distancing or something similar. So thank you, Don, for that idea. That's appreciated.
also related to that, just dawned on me, one of the things that I see in both Queensway and Sussex, is two streets that I watched the storm drain, is also the fact that, and I reported on the city's reporting problem website, over the past year and a half, the deterioration of the pavement on Sussex and Queensway is getting a lot of chunks of loose asphalt, which is washing down and periodically plugs up. So I'll pile up the chunks of broken asphalt on the curb, and I think eventually sort of disappear. But that's another issue. These two storm sewers end up going into a creek, and so basically you've got asphalt washing down in part of the system. Obviously, these things are could plug up the underground part of the system if you get enough chunks of the asphalt washing into the storm drain. So that gets into what the streets are separate, responsible for the maintenance of the pavement. Is that correct? Street department is the one that deals with, is that who deals with those issues with the asphalt?
With the street or the sidewalk? The street?
Oh, no, with the street, with the deterioration of the street pavement.
I think so.
Yeah, that should be the Public Works Department, I would say. I think it would be beneficial for us to try and get, you know, as many homeowners as possible involved. That way the city can focus on areas that we know won't have many volunteers. Because I'll tell you, by the stadium, I doubt you're going to get very many student houses who volunteer to go out and clean storm drains on the weekend. I don't think that's what they're looking forward to do. So city resources can be spent to get the areas, or, you know, another example is areas with clusters of retirees who may not be able to go out and bend over to clean out storm drains. So I would say if we could get a little bit of the strain off of CBU or the Public Works Department to clear some of those drains, I think it would be a worthwhile effort that could have tangible benefits for some people.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I observe is that I've literally take my lawn cart and lug off the organic material and put it into my compost area, into the backyard. And also I'll remove any plastic or be going down into the waterways. Kills more. You can take care of other issues besides just getting the water moving. You can prevent contamination downstream.
First, I want to ask if there's any more comment or questions about reaching out to CBU about a partnership of this kind. Okay, and then is there anybody who has anything else to add regarding moving forward in a COVID-19 world? And if there's not, I just want to remind everyone that I encourage you between now and January to think long and hard about how the commission can contribute to the community and to the environment in a way that is safe and appropriate for a COVID-19 world. So is there anyone who has anything to add now about that before we continue on to announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to commissioner announcements, and we'll start with Dave.
Okay, well, as I mentioned earlier, I've invited Andrea Webster from the Environmental Resilience Institute at IU to come and talk to us next month. One of our 15-minute introductions to programs kind of thing. And I listened in to a longer, it might've been a half day or even a full day program from the Environmental Resilience Institute. And they're doing lots of interesting things, but some of them seemed of interest to us. So Andrea is going to come and talk to us in November. And then it turned out that they have something called the Hoosier Resilience Index Readiness Assessment. And it struck me when I first heard about that that's something we ought to have been involved with. And then I find out that the sustainability director, Lauren Travis, is actually doing that. And I'm a little annoyed that we haven't been involved with it because it seems like much of what they're talking about is environmental stuff and we should have been involved. But anyway, if it's okay with everybody, I think I will try to invite Lauren to come and tell us about what's happening with this readiness assessment for the city, and invite her for December if we could. Make sense?
Makes sense to me. Does anyone have any thing to add to that or ask?
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you, Dave. Anything else? Okay, moving on to Mike.
I have nothing.
All right, Don, anything?
Really try to be very quick. The meeting that we had yesterday with the MC Iris, the other plants that were on the list, why we ended up our lovely invasive pear and tree of heaven, and off the top of my head, I can't remember the third one. Removal of those, a couple of those were tree of heaven and the pears can be potentially dangerous, costly, and difficult to do. And whereas the winter creeper is a real threat, as well the others are threats too, but it is a threat to our forests. So that was it, part of the rationale. And one of the other things I want to bring out, or bring to your attention, is the under the Restore Grant update, there's a Deer Browse citizen science project in the making, which they're going to be trying to get people in the community to, if they can, set aside some of their land. So those are the things other that takes out of yesterday's meeting that I thought I needed to pass on. And one other thing, I guess, the Asian bush honeysuckle, the members that participated yesterday, overall, everybody seemed to be fairly pleased with the success of that program. There's a lot more that can be done, but it's getting the message out and getting people to take responsibility for their own backyards, and also, you know, accomplishing some of our goals.
Any questions for Don? Moving on to Matt, any report?
Yeah, I can confirm that Tree of Heaven would be a tough ask for people to remove, as my dad and I removed a cluster in my backyard, the tallest of which was 60 feet tall. And that's just not going to be safe for a lot of people, especially around power lines or anything else. But separately, the only announcement I was going to make was I read a really interesting article in the Times talking about a nationwide shortage of arborists. And mostly focused on a couple arborists in the New England area who said, with the changing climate, they're recommending people plant a lot of trees that aren't particularly native to the New England area. They named a lot of them that are native around here. I remember redbud, persimmon. I can't remember much else off the top of my head, but it made me wonder, just thinking forwards, at what point we want to start looking at trees that are native to a couple states south of here instead of just natives, whether it's street trees or recommendations just to the public in their own yards. I don't have the answers, but I just wanted to put that out there and see at what point we want to consider that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all. No further announcements.
Any questions for Matt?
My wife's a retired forester. I should ask her that question.
Do we have announcements from Linda? Anything from Ben? All right, I have nothing more except that I'm glad to be back. If anyone needs anything from me, you can always email me. I try to respond as quickly as possible. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, I'll second. Anyone opposed to adjourning? All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your night. I look forward to talking to you again. Stay safe out there.
Good night, all.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Everybody, bye.
Bye-bye.